Okay, cool, nice. So we're just going to start off with a brief, uh, basic question for you. Um, so what's your role in the Connecticut legislature, and how long have you been in your current position?
So I am a state senator for the 30th district, which includes, believe it or not, actually not all of Brookfield. There's a little piece of Brookfield that's not in my Senate district, but that's ultimately the town I live in, and it's also the second biggest town in the district. The first biggest is New Milford, but it stretches from Brookfield all the way to the Mass border in Salisbury, and many towns in between. Um, and my role as a state senator is to represent the district, as I said, in the state senate. There's two chambers of Connecticut government. Or the Connecticut legislature, I should say. There's the House of Representatives, which has 151 state reps, and there's a state senate, which is 36 senators. It operates in a very similar or the same function as the U.S. government in that there's a U.S. Senate, obviously, and then a House of Representatives. And it's the same exact process for bills passing. So bills can be proposed by either a senator or a rep, and ultimately, for the bill to become law, it has to get enacted or approved in both chambers, the House and the Senate, and signed into law by the governor. Same as the U.S. government with the Senate, the House of Reps, and signed into law by the president. Or ultimately, it could be vetoed by the president too, or vetoed by the governor for that matter, which a number of bills do every year. There's usually two or three of the governor usually vetoes every year. Um, but yeah, so my role was to vote on behalf of my constituents, which many of you are, and and also advocate on their behalf with state agencies within state government.
And I believe I have the next question. Thank you for answering. It's a pleasure to meet
Mhm.
you, Senator Harding. How
Yes,
has your experience coaching youth sports influenced your outlook on issues and necessities in Connecticut?
it's a great question. I think understanding that there's challenges that everyone has and unique challenges, and so children are unique, right? So in coaching youth sports, every child is different. Every child has a different skill set. For baseball, for example, you might have somebody that doesn't hit as well, but they're really good at pitching, or someone that has struggles in the field at first base, let's say, but is a really great hitter, right? And so part of being a good coach or understanding your players is putting people in the right spots where they succeed, and understanding that everyone's different. So, my votes understand that everyone's different, and so that my district is different. So I might have one person that comes to me and says, "I feel one particular way about an issue," and then another person come to me and feel the exact opposite way. And it's not saying that either one of them is wrong. They just look at things differently and process things differently. And so it has helped me, I believe, respect the differences in my constituents, and understand that they may have a different opinion than I do, and that there's difference of opinions amongst each other. And then my goal is always to try to find a balance and find out find and create policies that work for everyone at the end of the day. So it's a great question, but I think understanding our differences is probably an important aspect of being a state senator, and probably something that I've learned the most in coaching youth sports.
Nice. So this next question is kind of in the same vein as that question. So how is your work as a lawyer translated into your work as a senator?
Right, another good question. So yeah, so one of the things that a lot of people don't know is that Connecticut is a citizen legislature, which means that we get paid part-time, and we're in session part-time. So actually, we just ended up session just 2 days ago. We ended our session, and so generally we don't go back up to session again unless there's a special session until, believe it or not, next year, February. So there's a long gap in between. So we have jobs that many of us work at in between the legislative sessions. So my 9 to 5 job is a lawyer. And but there's a lot of people up in the legislature that have different 9 to 5 jobs. They're realtors, they're police officers, they're firefighters, their teachers, their nurses, their doctors. It really runs the gamut. And so it always is interesting because you bring a particular expertise in your field to being a legislature. So obviously, when we deal with medical issues, doctors and nurses and other nurses assistants, etc., have the expertise on those issues, and they're able to provide an insight that you would otherwise not have. For me, uh, being a lawyer, I think it has helped me understand the laws that we're enacting and how statutes are read. So ultimately, our job is to pass laws, pass statutes. But as a lawyer, I have a unique, experience in reading those statutes and understanding how it's applicable to daily life. That's essentially my job as a lawyer. So I think it has provided me an insight when passing law to read what we're passing and understand, how it might be interpreted by other lawyers, which is really critically important, I think, to passing good legislation, because ultimately bills are passed with the intention of doing certain things. If they're not written in the way that effectuates the what you're trying to do, it's not as effective, obviously, right? So that's generally how my legal background, I think, has aided me in being a senator.
Nice. And then this next question, any one of you guys can ask this one.
I guess I'll take this one basically. So, what specifically inspired you be to want to be this senator of the 30th Senate district?
Great question. So, I think, to go back to what inspired me in general, I think one of the things that inspired me when I first ran for state rep before I was a state senator was, I wanted to make a difference, and I think all of you probably feel the same exact way. But one of the things that was bothering me was that there were a lot of people my age at the time in Brookfield, but across the state in Connecticut, for that matter, that were leaving because they couldn't afford to live here at the early part of their life. They weren't making enough money, and there wasn't enough opportunities for them. And so that bothered me because a lot of them were my friends that were leaving the state of Connecticut. And the thing that bothered me too was that my friends' parents were also leaving because they couldn't afford to live here in their retirement years. We have some of the highest taxes in the country. We have some of the highest electric rates in the country. And so, those are all things that are factored into them leaving. And I wanted to be able to make a difference in making Connecticut a more affordable place to live, reducing taxes, reducing our electric bills, reducing property taxes, all things that have driven up costs for people to live here and for small businesses to grow here. And so that's really the reason I ran, and it's still the reason that inspires me. My parents still live here. I still want them to stay here because their grandchildren live right here in Connecticut. My kids obviously live in Brookfield with me, and my nephew lives in New Fairfield with my sister, which is also in my Senate district. And they want to stay here, but it's growing increasingly more unaffordable, and taxes continue to rise. Um, Electric rates continue to rise because we keep on investing in initiatives that are extremely expensive for the people of the state. And so, my drive continues to be the same to make Connecticut a better and more affordable place to live. And when it comes down to specifically the 30th district, I love our part of the state. I've lived here pretty much my entire life since I was about 3 or 4 years old. And so I care about our area. So when it comes down to investment from the state, like grants and other things or opportunities for our area of the state, it's the reason why I want to do this because I want to make sure that our area of the state gets viewed first in line when it comes down to either grants or investment or whatever the case may be, because I'm biased towards where I live, where I think a lot of us are, and I want to make our area of the state even better than anywhere else.
All right, I have the next question. The next question is, you're on various committees. What inspired you to join them and what inspired you to work in these fields?
Good question. So one of the committees I'm on is the Environment Committee. One of the reasons is because Candlewood Lake is the biggest lake in Connecticut, and so is Lowell Moon is the second biggest lake. So growing up in a town, representing a town that has two of the biggest lakes in the state, it's important to make sure that, I just talked about investment and grants going to our area. And that's one of the things I wanted to make sure, being on the Environment Committee, is that there was an attention when it comes down to environmental protection on investing in protecting Lakes Winona and Candlewood. And that also now encompasses other lakes in my district, whether it be Twin Lakes in Salisbury or Bantam Lake in Litchfield. There's a lot of lakes all across my district now. What's one of the biggest reasons I joined the Environment Committee. I also believe in open space preservation. We have this continued development, not only in Brookfield, but all across the district and across the state, where open space is being developed, whether it be for apartments or commercial, whatever the case may be. And I don't think there has been enough respect for how that overdevelopment impacts our environment, impacts the open space and beauty that we have in our corner of the state. And so being on the Environment Committee is very important to me in that regard. I'm also on the Appropriations Committee, and that's the committee that invests and appropriates for the state of Connecticut. So part of the reason I ran, as I mentioned earlier, was making sure that we get our cut of the cake, so to say, or cut of the pie, what have you, here in our area of the state, so we're not forgotten. And so being on the Appropriations Committee, I think, helps me keep a closer eye on how the state appropriates their money, and if there are grants and other funding mechanisms available, to make sure that, I can raise my hand and say, I'd like that money to go to my district, and help people in my district first. Those are two committees that I'm a part of that, I joined really because of the reason that I am a senator, and that's investment funding and open space preservation, and helping invest and protect our local lakes.
So, to essentially build off of that question, are there any specific issues you'd hope to highlight when you join these committees?
Investment in our area of the state was one of the things that I mentioned. The lakes, like I talked about, is another. Open space preservation. There's an effort, and it's not necessarily the Environment Committee, but it's more the Planning and Development Committee in Hartford, but it impacts the environment and the Environment Committee. And there's an issue called statewide zoning. So basically, what some individuals in Hartford would like to see is basically no local zoning. The state would basically decide what gets developed, where it gets developed in all towns, particularly in Brookfield, anywhere else in the state. And I think it's very harmful. I think local towns should determine development, where it gets developed, how it gets developed. That's one issue that's very important to me. I really truly believe in local zoning and planning. I think it's very important that all the towns, not only Brookfield, and not only the 30th district, but any town throughout the state should be able to determine development. And like I mentioned, and so that's one of the issues that I think is important to highlight in my role in the Environment Committee.
So I have the next question here. So what are some recently proposed bills or acts that you have, supported or even rejected or, went against? If you could just.
Mhm. Sure. So one thing is Senate Bill 4 that I helped craft with Senator Ryan Fazio, who's another senator right around my age from Greenwich. He represents Greenwich, and is a very, very smart energy policy whiz. He really understands energy policy really well. And so part of that is making sure that our electric rates are more affordable, like we just talked about earlier at the beginning, one of the reasons I first ran. Senator Fazio and I worked with him to craft something called Senate Bill 4, which passed in a bipartisan fashion in both chambers, and hopefully will be signed into law by the governor relatively soon, just this last session. And it helps reduce this public benefit charge. So over the summer, there was a lot of upset Eversource customers, including myself, that opened their bill, and so this public benefit charge that's added on to your electric bill that's already unaffordable to begin with, So this was the first step in reducing that public benefit charge, so that the consumers wouldn't have to pay as much money in their electric bills, and make it just a little bit more affordable for them. It doesn't go far enough. It's got way more work to do. But like a lot of things in government and politics, it's usually, one step at a time, and the hope is that if you continue progressing and continue working hard and focusing on it, that over time your goal will be met. And that's certainly the mindset here for me on this bill. So Senate Bill 4 is one thing that was important to me this session that I was very happy to work on and very happy to see pass.
So next, I'd like to take a little step back from the policy and kind of get into your backstory as a politician.
Sure.
So here's this question. So what steps have you taken to get to your current position? I know you talked a little bit about your career as a lawyer. You've grown up in this area your whole life, so maybe some other things.
Yeah, sure. So good question. I went to law school in New York Law in Manhattan. And so I would stay at my grandmother in Yonkers during the week, and then would come back home to Brookfield on the weekends. And so I stayed in touch in town government and with people in town when I was in law school, even in New York. And then when I came back, I started at a local law firm in Milford as like a part-time associate, and I just started getting active in local politics. And so I got appointed to the Zoning Board of Appeals as my first official government position, I guess. And then I got elected to the Board of Ed about a year later in 2013. And I was on the Board of Ed from 2013 to 2017. And I got elected as a state rep while I was in the Board of Ed, actually. So in 2015, I got elected in a special election. And I was a state rep until 2022 when I ran for state senate. So, I've been involved in government, I would say, for the better part of over 10 years now, a little more actually. And it started with just getting appointed to a local zoning board and helping out in local government, being involved. I was a member of the Lions Club, member of, Brookfield baseball and softball. Um, Helped coach a bunch of kids and teams. And so, I guess I've been active in community stuff even outside of government or politics for a really long time since I was in college. And so, like what you guys are doing here, for example, is an example of that. So it doesn't always have to be like an official elected position. It could simply be part of a local group or an organization that you believe in with friends of yours or like-minded people that believe in certain things and working together locally. I mean that's kind of how I first started getting involved, and it's how I continue to operate.
Also straying away from your work, Senator Harding, earlier you mentioned your love for Connecticut, as we all do. It's a really pretty state. And
Yeah.
we're wondering, what is your favorite thing about the state?
The favorite thing about Connecticut, that's a great question. Wow. That's a hard question. That's probably the hardest question I've gotten all week. Favorite thing about Connecticut, I have celiac disease, so I can't eat pizza. And I know a lot of people will say Connecticut pizza is the best. My parents grew up in New York. I think they disagree. They probably think the pizza in New York is better, but most of my friends here in Connecticut think Connecticut pizza is the best. And it looks the best. I haven't eaten it in a long time because of my celiac, but I think New Haven style pizza is pretty darn good. And the pizza here in Brooklyn is really good. Like, John's Best is awesome. I love John's Best and Mancha Mancha. But anyway, I don't know why. I went off on a tangent. So my favorite thing about Connecticut, I love our weather, our seasons here. And it's not just Connecticut. It probably is like the entire New England tri-state area weather. But I like how that we have like a winter and it snows and it can get cold and my kids can go out and, make snowmen and go in the go sledding. But then, the months change and now it's like a day like today where it's 90 degrees out. You get to enjoy the sun, go to Candle Lake or go on a boat or go to your pool or whatever. So I would say the weather in Connecticut's pretty darn good until we have some of those really bad thunderstorms sometimes, like we had the microburst back in 2018 that, you know, put trees in my parents' house and other people's houses in town. So that's when the weather's not so nice. But for the most part, it's really good here. So the weather, I guess, and the people. The people, Connecticut is a lot of smart, educated, fun, kind people everywhere you go in the state. particularly here in our area. And so I would say those two things. But good question.
I have the next question. So I was wondering, as a representative of Connecticut, are there any like misconceptions about our state that you'd like to clear up or like, debunk?
Debunk. Um, you know what? So one of the things is like, so you guys probably watch a lot of like the cable news, right? And you when you hear about politics, you probably talk they talk about a lot about DC and the federal stuff, right? And it you get the idea that like Republicans and Democrats just don't get along. They all they do is fight all day and they hate each other, and because that's essentially you'd watch news, that's what you would if they're talking about the federal government, that's what you honestly think, right? Because that's what they tell you. But Connecticut, we all get along really well. I mean, I would say I'm a Republican, but some of my best friends in Hartford are Democrats. And I talk to them and get along with them really well. And we work together. There's only like, I would say out of all the bills we vote on, and there's hundreds of bills that we vote on every single legislative session, there are maybe only 30 of them that are where there's a political divide, where there's any, like a big number of Republicans or Democrats voting differently. The other 70, which makes it, 70 plus percent, if not more, are done really, really on a bipartisan, almost unanimous basis where everyone votes for it. So I think there's a lot more bipartisanship and camaraderie amongst parties, despite our political differences and how we look at things a little differently, than you may see on, cable news about what happens in DC. So I guess the one thing I'm going to debunk is the fact that people of different political parties, particularly in government, don't get along because that's just, at least in Connecticut politics and government, that's actually not the case at all.
Yeah, I mean that's what a big part of this group is for, to understand
That's
that
awesome.
it's not just party lines.
Yeah.
A lot of it is nonpartisan or bipartisan.
Actually, William Tong is the Attorney General for the state. And I'm sure if you follow Connecticut politics, you've all heard of him. He'd be a good person to get on your show. And if you want me to get his contact info for you, I can try to set that up for you.
Yeah, I mean that would
Um,
be fantastic. Yeah.
yeah, he's somebody that probably, if Ned Lamont doesn't run for governor, he's probably going to run for governor. He may very well be governor, or even U.S. senator. He's a very popular Democrat in the state. But he is somebody that him and I talk on a regular basis, and we are very good friends. And we probably don't see eye to eye on a lot of things politically, but we work together on things that we can agree on, and we have a lot of respect for each other despite our different viewpoints. So I think him and I are a really good example of two people that, ideologically don't see exactly eye to eye, but ultimately see the best in each other. And I think walk away from each other with respect, knowing that, you may look at this differently, but it doesn't make you a bad person. You just look at this differently than I look at this. And as long as your goal in the end, which I think is his goal and mine, is to do better things for people, you're doing the right thing. You just have a different way of looking at it. And so he and I are able to see that in each other, and you don't see that a lot in DC, as I mentioned. But he's somebody I'll make a phone call with him today and see if he could join you guys because he'd be somebody very interesting for you guys to talk to.
Yeah, I mean that'd be incredible. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
All right, so I got one last question for you, just to
sure.
wrap it up.
Yeah.
So looking ahead in the future, what is one goal that you'd like to accomplish that would positively impact Connecticut residents in their everyday lives?
Great question, Evan. A great way to end it. I would say uh, energy, electric rates we talked about earlier. So I want to go to that. I would say honest budgeting is really, really important. Your dad would appreciate this, being the town treasurer, and he's worked hard on budgeting locally and making sure we have honest, responsible budgets in town. But our state could have those too, and we really have. We've had a long history in the state of multiple parties kind of screwing things up just for lack of a more a nicer term, just really messing things up. And we haven't budgeted right. So the minute that money has come in, we've just spent it. We didn't save it. We didn't pay down our debts. And we've actually taken a turn for the positive, and we've done some of those things, I would say, over the past 6 or 7 years. And so we're in much better fiscal shape. But we need to do way more. And we need to really take a look at how much our bureaucracy has grown and find ways to make it more efficient here in Connecticut so that year after year after year, we're not spending more and more and more, which unfortunately is getting to a place where we're taxing a lot of people out of the state. And it's making it hard for people like seniors that are on fixed incomes. It's making it harder for young families that are just starting out, that, maybe starting their careers and not making as much as they would like to be making going into the future. And young families are expensive. Kids cost money. They have daycare and school and food and diapers and things like all those things that the babies and kids come with. So you have young families that are not making as much with a new load with children that are expensive. And so making Connecticut more affordable is the big in a myriad, excuse me, of different ways is probably my number one goal moving forward.
Awesome. Well, thank you for meeting with us. It's been an absolute pleasure.